May in Iceland is amazing, but only if you plan it well. In this video I'll show you how to avoid the biggest mistakes travelers make, what to pack, what to skip, and how to see the most without wasting your time and money. And if you are new here, my name is Jan, I live in Iceland and I help people plan unforgettable trips here. And before we dive in, if you are wondering where to find the most beautiful spots, hidden gems and practical tips for your May adventure, I've put them all into my ultimate Iceland guide, but more on that later. Let's start with something that will always affect you, no matter the season: weather and daylight hours. And here is actually where May has some great advantages over many other months. You can expect very long days with 17 to 20 hours of daylight per day. At the beginning of the month, sunrise is at 5 am and sunset a little before 10 pm. And by the end of the month, you can expect sunrise at 3:30 am and sunset at 11:30 pm. And one thing to note is that because the sunrise and sunset are so close to each other, it doesn't get completely dark anymore. The big advantage of that is that you can have long days and you are not limited by darkness. And it is also great, for example, if you want to avoid crowds at the most popular places. Because thanks to the bright days in May, you can basically visit them very early in the morning or late at night. And that is one of the best ways to experience those iconic places that are usually packed with people, many times completely alone. Probably the biggest disadvantage of those long days is that the May basically marks the end of the Northern Light season because it simply doesn't get dark enough at night to see them. Regarding the weather, May generally has mild weather with average temperatures around 6 degrees. But the temperature can go as high as 15 degrees and can even drop below freezing. And so even though May has generally mild and more stable weather compared to, for example, some winter months, you can still sometimes experience all 4 seasons in a single day. Which brings us to packing and clothes, one of the most discussed topics amongst people traveling to Iceland. And I know that many people seem to really stress about this, and so I'll just try to keep it as simple and practical as I can. And I think that the best way to do that is to basically just tell you what works for me, as someone who actually lives here. Because temperatures in May mostly hover above zero, this is the time of the year I tend to put away my bulky insulated puffer layers. Unless I'm camping, for example, but that is a completely different story. Instead, what I prefer to wear this time of the year is usually thinner layers. First, I like to wear a merino wool base layer. It's a great material that keeps you warm, dries quickly if you sweat, and is ideal for traveling, as it usually won't stink even after wearing it for days. On top of that, a down jacket, and if it's windy or rainy, some sort of waterproof shell. And for the legs, merino wool long johns and hiking pants. Something I would consider having is an extra layer, like a turtleneck sweatshirt, hoodie or warm flannel shirt. Just in case that it gets too cold or you simply just want something more comfortable to wear, especially if you go for a dinner to a restaurant or if you are just hanging out in your accommodation. Or what I even often recommend is to skip it completely. And once you are in Iceland, buy this, a traditional Icelandic wool sweater, which is super warm and at the same time checks the souvenir box as well. Other than that, don't forget some waterproof gloves, a buff, a warm beanie and warm wool socks. And depending on how waterproof your clothes are, you might want to consider bringing rain pants and jacket or a raincoat. And you might not end up using them at all, but they could literally save you, especially during those days when it's pouring rain. And regarding the shoes, the easiest and the most convenient footwear is simple hiking boots, but generally you just need something that has a good grip and won't get wet easily. And some other packing tips that I can give you is to bring swimsuits so you can visit all the hot springs and lagoons, and a quick dry towel and sunglasses. And bring a sleep mask because, like I mentioned, it doesn't get completely dark at night anymore. And not all the accommodations have good blackout curtains, so having a sleep mask can definitely save your night. And a full packing list is actually a part of my free email planning series, which you can also find in the link below. And so now when you know what weather you can expect and what to pack, you should probably decide on how you are going to build your itinerary. And unless you have someone like me build it for you, you just have to be very careful to avoid some of the most common mistakes. The first thing that you have to consider is the total length of your stay. If you, let's say, only have a couple of days, then you will probably only have time for like Reykjavik, Reykjanes Peninsula, Golden Circle and perhaps either part of the south coast or Snæfellsnes Peninsula. Just please don't even think about doing the entire ring road, or in other words driving around the whole island, unless you have at least 7 to 10 days. And let me say, you will find 5 days ring road itineraries online, and of course it is completely possible to do it, but it just makes no sense whatsoever. Because just think about it, if you do that, you will spend basically more time in the car driving than actually exploring all the beautiful places that Iceland has to offer. But let's say that if you have a week or more and it is your first time visiting Iceland, then sure, the ring road makes complete sense. And for those of you visiting for a second time, and those who have already seen the highlights, consider focusing only on 1 or 2 regions. Basically structuring your trip in a way that will truly allow you to slow down and explore off the beaten path. Another common mistake that so many people make is over-planning. There are hundreds, if not thousands of places worth visiting in Iceland, and it is easy to get overwhelmed. And all these places require different amounts of time. Some you need to hike to, others have difficult roads leading to them. And all of this combined can mean some serious time setbacks during your trip, basically leading to always being behind the schedule and even missing many places that you were hoping to see. My solution for this is to pick a couple of places and activities that are on your must-visit list, build your itinerary around that, and then fill up the rest with optional places along the way. And here's where my guide actually comes in handy. You can build your entire itinerary with just a couple of clicks. Mark some of those places as optional, leave notes in there, and each place comes with a description and useful information, like whether there is a challenging road or a parking fee. And there is so much more than that, but just check out the link below. But back to planning, because this is not everything. While you are building your itinerary, you'll also want to leave some wiggle room, because basically what can happen is that you finish planning your day, but then when you start looking for accommodation, you basically realize that everything in the area that you were hoping to stay is completely booked out. That said, it doesn't always happen, and if it does, it usually only means like having to adjust your plans by no more than 100 kilometers. But still, it is something to keep in mind. May is still considered to be a shoulder season, so it is not as booked out as during the peak summer. But it is getting busier, especially towards the end of the month. And so that's why you should basically always think about booking your accommodation in Iceland in advance. The best, in my opinion, is to use platforms like booking.com or Airbnb. And if you do a little bit of extra homework, then some of those places that are listed on these websites have their own websites, and they sometimes offer a special discounts there if you book directly through them. And speaking of bookings, guided activities are another thing that's worth thinking about in advance, if you want to secure your dates and the best time. And then there is a rental car, which you should also think about booking well ahead of time. And while we are on this topic, let me also go over some very important things that you should definitely know about before driving in Iceland in May. First of all, you will need to very carefully think about what car to get, 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. Generally speaking, if you are planning to stay on the main road and your itinerary doesn't include many gravel roads or regions like Westfjords, you should be fine with a 2-wheel drive. There is still a chance of snow in parts like North Iceland and the Westfjords, but it is less likely than, for example, in April. Just remember that 2-wheel drive will definitely limit the places that you'll be able to reach. Most of the time it is just because of the ground clearance, which most of the 2-wheel drive cars just don't offer. And many sites in Iceland, even those near the main road, have often bumpy and rocky roads leading to them. And so especially if you know that you are a curious and adventurous person who will want to explore less visited places, rent that 4-wheel drive car and you just won't have to worry about this anymore. Plus, it will lower the chance of any damage on the rental car and, paying tons of money for repairs that insurance might not cover. Okay, so you are now pretty much all set for your Iceland adventure, but there is still a lot of useful information that you might want to know before heading out. And so here are some of the frequently asked questions that people usually have about traveling to Iceland in May. What activities should I do? Well, there is a lot, and just to name a few, you have snowmobiling on a glacier, helicopter tours, ATVs, lava cave excursions, horseback riding, whale watching, zipline, snorkeling, diving, kayaking, what else, rafting, and so much more. But if you're thinking of choosing just one or two, then I always say that it is best to pick something that is very unique to Iceland and something that truly helps you to experience local nature. And for that reason, I just think that you cannot go wrong with things like whale watching or glacier tours. Can I go hiking? Yes, absolutely you can. Just keep two things in mind. One is that some parts of Iceland still have plenty of snow up in the mountains, which might limit where you'll be able to go. For that reason, the southern half of the island will generally give you more choices. That said, you can also expect a lot of mud on many trails, so bring proper boots. Can I see puffins in May? Yes, May actually marks the beginning of the puffin season and you might be able to spot them at many places around the island. If you want to specifically visit a place just to see the puffins, then check out Lautrabjarg, Borgafjordur Eystri, the Tjortnes Peninsula, or many locations along the south coast, like the Westman Islands or Deerhole. Are there many sheep in May? Yes, May is a lambing season, and after spending the whole winter indoors, farmers are finally letting their sheep out. And that means that you'll probably see a lot of small lambs running around. It is super cute, but also a bit dangerous, because they like to run across the road. And so just be very cautious and slow down when you see them running near the roadside. Can you visit ice caves? Well, most of the ice caves close by April, but some tours still offer summer ice cave alternatives in May, like for example Katla. That is one of the places that's considered safe, but there is a reason why summer isn't ideal for ice caves. And it's simple, warmer temperatures basically affect the ice stability and May can already have some pretty warm days. That said, these tours are run by professionals and I like to believe that safety is always a top priority. But if you're skeptical, maybe look into alternatives like ice climbing or glacier hike where the risk of ice collapsing is way lower. Can I see lupins in May? Well, while there are usually no lupins blooming at the beginning of May, you'll usually start seeing them later in the month, mainly in the south of the island. And for the northern parts of the country, the lupin season usually begins a little later. Can I visit highlands? Well, unfortunately, the majority of highland roads still remain closed at this time of the year. And so you'll just have to settle for hundreds of other incredible places around the island. Where can I find all the amazing places and hidden gems to visit? Honestly, and I know yes, this sounds biased, but it is all in my Iceland guide. I built it specifically for travelers like you and in my opinion there is just no better tool right now to help you plan your entire trip and discover places you won't find in typical travel blogs or guidebooks. But Iceland has so many incredible places to see and if you enjoyed this video then you'll definitely want to check out this one next. It is a full guide to one of my favorite regions that I think you definitely should not miss.